7. Bagman and couch. Harry distanced himself from Ron and got to his feet. They had arrived on what appeared to be the deserted stretch of misty moor. In front of them was a pair of tired and grumpy looking wizards, one of whom was holding a large gold watch, the other a thick roll of parchment and a quill. Both were dressed as a muggle, though very impressively. The man with the watch wore a tweed suit with thigh-length galoshes, his colleague a kilt and paunch. "Morning, Basil," said Mr. Weasley, picking up the door and handing it to the Kittle Wizard, who threw it into a large box of used portkey inside him. Harry could see an old newspaper, an empty drink can, and a punctured football. "Hello there, Arthur," said Basil wearily. "Not on duty? Oh, it's all right for some. We have been here all night. You had better get out of the way. We have got a party coming in from the Black Forest at 55. Hang on, I'll find your campsite, Weasley." Weasley, we consulted his parchment list. About a quarter of a mile walk over there. First field you come to sight, manager's called Mr. Robert Diggory. Second field, ask for Mr. Penny. "Thanks, Basil," said Mr. Weasley, and he beckoned everyone to follow him. They set off across the deserted moor, unable to make out much through the mist. After about 20 minutes, a small stone cottage next to the gate swam into view. Beyond it, Harry could just make out the ghostly shape of hundred of tenth, rising up the gentle slope of a large field toward the dark wood horizon. They said goodbye to the dearie and approached the cottage door. A man was standing in the doorway, looking out at the tents. Harry knew at a glance that he was the only real mugger for several acres. When he heard their footsteps, he turned his head to look at them. "Morning," said Mr. Weasley brightly. "Morning," said the muggle. "Will you be Mr. Robert?" "I will," said Mr. Roberts. "And who are you, Weasley?" "Two tents, booked a couple of days ago." "Aye," said Mr. Robert, consulting a list tacked to the door. "You've got a space up by the wood, dear. Just the one night, that's it," said Mr. Weasley. "You'll be paying now, then," said Mr. Robert. "Right, certainly," said Mr. Weasley. He retreated a short distance from the cottage and beckoned Harry toward him. "Help me, Harry," he muttered, pulling a roll of muggle money from his pocket and starting to fill the note part. "This one's 10. Oh yes, I see the little number on it now. So this is 5 or 20. Harry corrected him in an undertone, uncomfortable, aware of Mr. Roberts trying to catch every word. Yes, so it is. I don't know this little bit of paper." "You foreign," said Mr. Robert as Mr. Weasley turned with the correct note. "Foreign," repeated Mr. Weasley, puzzled. "You are not the first one who had trouble with money," said Mr. Roberts, scrutinizing Mr. Weasley closely. "I had two try and pay me with a great gold coin with size of hubcap 10 minutes ago." "Did you really?" said Mr. Weasley nervously. Mr. Robert remarked around in for some change. "Never been this crowded," he said suddenly, looking out over the misty field again. "Hundred of pre-booking. People usually just turn up." "Is that right?" said Mr. Weasley, his hand held out for his change, but Mr. Robert didn't give it to him. He said thoughtfully, "People from all over, lots of foreigners, and not just foreigners, weirdos. You know, there is a bloke walking round in a kilt and a poncho." "Shouldn't he?" said Mr. Weasley anxiously. "It's like some sort of, I don't know, like some sort of rally," said Mr. Robert. "They all seem to know each other, like a big party." At that moment, a wizard in plus force appeared out of thin air next to Mr. Robert's front door. Oblivata, he said sharply, pointing his wand at Mr. Robert instantly. Mr. Robert's eyes slid out of focus, his brows thickened, and a look of dreamy unconcern fell over his face. Harry recognized the symptom of one who had just had his memory modified. Map of the campsite for you, Mr. Robert said acidly to Mr. Weasley. And your change. Thank you very much, said Mr. Weasley. The wizard in plus force accompanied them toward the gate to the campsite. He looked exhausted. His chin was blue with stubble, and there were deep purple shadows under his eyes. Once out of earshot of Mr. Roberts, he muttered to Mr. Weasley, been having a lot of trouble with him. Need a memory charm 10 minutes times a day to keep him happy. And Ludo Bagman's not helping, trotting around talking about bulgers. And Quaffle at the top of his voice, not a worry about anti-muggle security, Blimmy. I'll be glad when this is over. See you later, Arthur. He disappeared. I thought Mr. Bagman was head of magical games and sports, and Ginny looking surprised. He should know better than to talk about bludgers near muggles. Shouldn't he? Should, said Mr. Weasley, smiling and leading them through the gate into the campsite. But Ludo always been a bit, well, lax about security. You couldn't wish for a more enthusiastic head of the sport department through the he played for England himself. You know, and he was the best beater the Kimbo Raps ever had. They dropped up the misty field between long rows of tents. Most look almost ordinary. Their owner had clearly tried to make them as muggle-like as possible, but had slipped up by adding chimney or bell pulls or weather vents. However, here and there was a tent so obviously magical that Harry could hardly be surprised that Mr. Robert was getting suspicious. Halfway up the field stood an extravagant confession of strict skill, like a miniature places, several like hawk tethered at the entrance. A little farther on, they passed a tent that had 3 floors and 7 turrets, and a short way beyond that was a tent that had a front garden attached, completely with bird bath, cereal, and fountain always the same, said Mr. Weasley, smiling. We can't resist showing off when we get together. Here we are, looking, this is us. They had reached the very edge of the wood at the top of the field, and here was an empty space with a small sign hammered into the ground that really Weasley. Couldn't have a better spot, said Mr. Weasley happily. The field is just on the other side of the wood there. We're as close as we could be. He hoisted his backpack from his shoulder. Right, he said excitedly. No magic allowed, strictly speaking. Not when we are out in this number of muggle land. We'll be putting these tents up by hand. Shouldn't be too difficult. Muggle do it all the time. Here, Harry, where do you reckon we should start? He had never been captain in his life. The Dursleys had never taken him on any kind of holiday. I thought to leave him with Mrs. Fig, an old neighbor. However, he and Hermione worked out that most of the roles and pages should go. And though Mr. Weasley was more of a hindrance than a help, because he get truly overexcited when it came to using the mallet. They finally managed to erect a pair of shabby two-man tents. All of them stood back to admire their handwork. Nobody looking at this tent would guess they belonged to wizards, Harry thought, but the trouble was that once Bill, Charlie, and Percy arrived, there would be a party of 10. Hermione seemed to have spotted this problem too. She gave Harry a puzzled look as Mr. Weasley dropped to his hand and knees and he entered the first tent. Well, a bit cramped, but I think we'll all squeeze in, come and have a look. Harry bent down, ducked under an tent flap and felt his jaw drop. He had walked into that like old-fashioned three-room flat, completely with bathroom and kitchen. Oddly enough, it was furnished in exactly the same sort of style as Mr. Fick's house. Were crochet covered on the mismatched chair and a strong smell of cats. Well, it's not for long, said Mr. Weasley, mopping his bald patch with a handkerchief and peering in the four-box bed that stood in the bedroom. I borrowed this from Perkin at the office. Doesn't camp much anymore. Poor fellow, he's got lumbago. He picked up the dusty kettle and peered inside it. We'll need water. There is a tap marked on this map the Muggle gave us, said Ron, who had followed Harry inside the tent and seemed completely impressed by its extraordinary inner proportion. On the other side of the field, well, why don't you, Harry and Hermione, go and get us some water? Mr. Weasley handed over the kettle and a couple of saucepans. The rest of us will get some wood off a fire, but we have got an hour, said Ron. Why can't we just run? Muggle security, said Mr. Weasley, his face shining with anticipation. A real Muggle camp, they'll cook on fire out the door. I have seen them at it. After a quick tour of the girls' tent, which was slightly smaller than the boys', though without the smell of cats, Harry, Ron, and Hermione set off across the campsite with a kettle and saucepan. Now, with the sun newly risen and the mist lifting, they could see the city of tents that stretched in every direction. They had made their way slowly through the rows, staring eagerly around. It was only just dawning on Harry how many witches and wizards there must be in the world. He had never really thought much about those in other countries. Their fellow campers were starting to wake up. First to stare were the families with small children. Harry had never seen witches and wizards this young before. A tiny boy, no older than 2 was crouched outside a large pyramid-shaped tent, holding a wand and poking happily at a slug in the grass, which was swelling slowly to the size of Salmi. As they drew level with him, his mother came hurrying out of the tent. How many times, Kevin? You don't touch Daddy's wand here. She had trotted on the giant slug and buzzed. Her scolding carried after them on the still air, mingling the little boy's yell. You slug, you must slug. A short way farther on, they saw 2 little witches, barely older than Kevin, who were riding toy broomsticks that rose only high enough for the girls' toes to skim and dewy grass. A ministry of wizards had already spotted them. As he hurried past Harry, Ron, and Hermione, he muttered distractedly, in broad daylight, parent having a lie-in, I suppose. Here and there, adult wizards and witches were emerging from their tent and starting to cook breakfast, some with furtive look around them, on their fire with their wands, others were striking match with dubious look on their faces, as though sure this couldn't work. We African wizards sat in serious conversation, all of them wearing long white robes and roasting what looked like a rabbit on a bright pulper fire, while a group of middle-aged American witches sat gossiping happily beneath a spangled banner stretched between their tents that read the Slam Witches Institute. Harry caught snatch of conversation in strange language from the inside of tent they passed. And though he couldn't understand a word, the tone of every single voice was excited. Oh, is it my eyes or has everything gone green? Said Ron. It wasn't just Ron's eyes. They had walked into patch of tent that were all covered with thick growth of shamrock, so that it looked as though small oddly-shaped hillock had sprouted out of the earth. Grinning face could be seen under those that had their flap open. Then from behind them they heard their names: Harry, Ron, Hermione. It was Seamus Finnegan, their fellow Gryffindor fourth year. He was staring in front of his own shamrock-covered tent with a sandy-haired woman who had to be his mother, and his best friend Dean Thomas, also of Gryffindor. Like the decoration, said Seamus, grinning. Ministry not too happy. Oh, why shouldn't we show our colors? Said Miss Finnegan. You should see what the Bulgarians have got dangling all over their tents. You'll be supporting Ireland, of course, she added, eyeing Harry, Ron, and Hermione steadily. When they had assured that they were indeed supporting Ireland, they set off again. Though, as Ron said, like we had say anything else, surrounded by that lot. I wondered that Bulgarians have got dangling all over their tents, said Hermione. Let's go and have a look, said Harry, pointing to a large patch of tents upheld. Well, the Bulgarians' flag, white, green, and red flowers fluttering in the breeze. The tent were had not been bedecked with plant life, but each and every one of them had the same poster attached to it. A poster of very surly face with heavy black eyebrow. The picture was, of course, moving, but all it did was blink and scowl. Crumb, said Ron quietly. What? Said Hermione. Crumb, said Ron. Victor Crumb, the Bulgarian seeker. He looks really grumpy, said Hermione, looking around at many crumbs, blinking and squalling at them. Really grumpy? Ron raised his eyes to hit the heavens. Who cares what he looked like? He's unbelievable. He's really young too. Only just 18 or something. He's a genius. You wait until tonight, you'll see. There was already a small queue of the tap in the corner of the field. Harry, Ron, and Hermione joined it. Right behind a pair of men who were having a heated argument. One of them was a very old wizard who was wearing a long flowery nightgown. The other was clearly a ministry wizard. He was holding out a pair of pinstripe trousers and almost crying with expression. Just put them on. Archie, there is a good cap. You can't walk around like that. The Muggle ad gate's already getting suspicious. I bought these in a Muggle shop, said the old wizard, subordinately. Muggle wear them. Muggle women wear them. Archies, not the men, they wear this, said the ministry wizard, and he brandished the pin-strip trouser. I'm not putting them on, said old Archie in indigenization. I like a healthy breeze around my private thanks. Harmony was overcome with such a strong fit of the giggles at that point that she had to duck out of the queue and only returned when Archie had collected his water and moved away. Walking more slowly now because of the weight of the water, they made their way back through the campsite. Here and there they saw more families' faces, other Hogwarts students with their families. Oliver Wood, the old captain of Harry's house quidditch team, who had just left Hogwarts, dragged Harry over to his parents' tent to introduce him and told him excitedly that he had just been signed to the Puddlemore United reserve team. Next they were hailed by Ernie Macmill, a Hufflepuff fourth year, and a little farther on they saw Cho Chang, a very pretty girl who played Seeker on the round cloth team. She waved and smiled at Harry, who slopped quite a long of water down in his front, and he waved back. More to stop Ron from smirking than anything. Harry hurried pointed out a large group of teenagers whom he had never seen before. Who do you reckon they are? He said. They don't go to Hogwarts, do they? They go to some foreign school, said John. I know. There are others. Never meet anyone who went to one. Though Bill had a pen friend at a school in Brazil. This was years and years ago. And he wanted to go on an exchange trip, but Mom and Dad couldn't afford it. His pen friend got all offended when he said he wasn't going and sent him a first hat. His ears swelled up. He felt at hearing about other Wizardian school. He supposed now that he saw representative of so many nationalities in the campsite that he had been stupid never to realize that Hogwarts couldn't be the only one. He glanced at Hermione, who looked utterly unsurprised by the information. No doubt she had run across the news about other Wizardian school in some book or others. You have been ages, said George when they finally got back to the Weasley estate. Met a few people, said Ron, settling the water down. You not got the fire started yet? That's having fun with the matches, said Fred. Mr. Weasley was having no success at all the lighting the fire, but it wasn't for lack of trying. Splintered matches lighted the ground around him, but he looked as though he was having the time of his life. He said, as he managed to light up a match and promptly dropped it in surprise. Come here, Mr. Weasley said Hermione kindly, taking the box from him and showing him how to do it properly. At last they got the fire lit, though it was at last another hour before it was hot enough to cook anything. There was plenty to watch. While they waited, however, their tent seemed to be pitched right alongside a kind of thoroughfare through the field, and ministry members kept hurrying up and down it, greeting Mr. Weasley cordially as they passed. Mr. Weasley kept up running commentary, mainly for Harry's and Hermione's benefit. His own children knew too much about the ministry to be greatly interested. That was Cutterbetter Mockridge, head of the Goblin Lassian office. Here comes Gilbert Wimple. He is with the Committee on Experimental Charms. He's had those horns for a while now. Hello, Arnie. Cornell Passgood. He's an obligator, member of the Accidental Magic Reservoir Squad, you know, and that board and Crocker. They are unspeakable. They are what? From the Department of Ministries, top secret, no idea what they get up to. Last, the fire was ready, and they had just started cooking egg and sausage with Bill, Charlie, and Percy. Came strolling out the wood toward them. Just up here, Dad, said Percy loudly. Oh, excellent lunch. They were halfway through their plate of egg and sausage when Mr. Weasley jumped to his feet, waving and grinning at a man who was striding toward them. Ah, he said, the man on the moment, Ludo. Ludo Bagman was easily the most noticeable person Harry had seen so far, even including old Archie. In his flowered night dress, he was wearing long Quidditch robe in thick horizontal strip of bright yellow. Enormous pair of wraps was splashed across his chest. He had the look of the powerful built man grown slightly to sit. The ropes were stretched tightly across a large belly. He surely had not had in days when he had played Quidditch for England. His nose was squashed, probably broken by a stray bulger, Harry thought, but his round blue eyes, short blonde hair, and rosy complexion made him look like a very overgrown schoolboy. Hey there, Bagman called happily. He was walking as though he had spring attached to the ball of his feet and was plainly in a state of wild excitement. Arthur, old man, he puffed as he reached the campfire. What a day! Oh, what a day! Could we have asked for more perfect weather? A cloudless night coming and hardly a hiccup in the arrangement. Not much for me to do. Behind him, a group of haggard-looking ministry wizards pushed past, pointing at the distant evidence of some sort of magical fire that was standing violet spark 20 feet into the air. As he hurried forward with his hand outstretched, apparently his disapproval, the way Ludo Bagman ran his department did not prevent him from wanting to make the good impression. Ah, yes, said Mr. Weasley, grinning. This is my son Percy. He just started at ministry. And this is Fred. No, George, sorry. Not Fred. Bill, Charlie, Ron, my daughter Ginny, and Ron's friends Hermione Granger and Harry Potter. Bagman did the smallest of double take when he heard Harry's name, and his eyes performed the familiar flick upward to the scar on Harry's forehead. Everyone, Mr. Weasley continued. This is Ludo Bagman. You know who he is. Thanks to him, we have got such a good ticket. Bagman beamed and waved his hand as if to say it had been nothing. Fancy a fluttered on the match, Arthur, he said eagerly, jiggling what seemed to be the large amount of gold in pocket of his yellow and black robe. I have already got Roddy Ponton beating me. Bulgaria will score first. I offered him nice odds considering Ireland found three of the strongest I have seen in the year. And little Athamas has put a hard share in her farm on week-long match. Oh, go on then, Mr. Weasley. Let's see. A gallon on Ireland to win. A gallon. Ludo Bagman looked slightly disappointed, but recovered himself very well. Very well. And other Packer, they are a bit young to be gabbling, said Mr. Weasley. Molly wouldn't like. Well, bet 37 gallon, 50 sickle, and 3 nuts, said Fred as he and George quickly pulled all their money. That Ireland win, but Victor Crumb get the snitch. Oh, and well, throw in a fake wand. You don't want to go showing Mr. Bagman rubbish like that. Percy hissed, but Bagman didn't seem to think the wand was rubbish at all. On the contrary, his boyish face shone with excitement as he took it from Fred, and when the wand gave a loud smack and turned into the rubber chicken. Batman roared with laughter. Excellent! I haven't seen one that convincing in years. I had paid 5 gallons for that. Percy froze in an attitude of stunned disapproval. Boys, said Mr. Weasley under his breath, I don't want you to betting. That's all you're saving your mother. Don't be a spoil sport, Arthur, boomed Ludo Bagman, rattling his pocket excitedly. They are old enough to know what they want. They reckon Ireland will win, but Crumbs get the snitch. Not a chance, boy, not a chance. I'll give you excellent all that one. We'll add 5 gallons for the funny wand. They shall we? Mr. Weasley looked on helplessly as Ludo Bagman whipped out a notebook and quill it began jotting down the twins' name, Cheers and George. Taking the slip of parchment began handed him and tucking in away carefully. Bagman turned most cheerfully back to Mr. Weasley. Couldn't do me a brew, I suppose. I'm keeping an eye out for battery Crouch. My Bulgarian opposite number making difficulties and I can't understand what he is saying. But he'll be able to sort it out. He speaks about 150 languages. Mr. Crouch, said Percy, suddenly abandoning his look of poker-stiff disapproval and positively writhing with excitement. He speaks over 200. Mermish and Gobblebook and Troll. Anyone can speak troll, said Fred dismissively. All you have to do is point and grunt. Percy threw Fred an excited, nasty look and stoked the fire vigorously. to bring the kettle back to the boil. Any news of Bertha Joachim yet, Ludo? Mr. Weasley asked the bagman, settle himself down on the grass beside them all. Not a dicky bird, said Bagman comfortably, but she'll be on a poor old Bertha memory like a leaky cauldron. And no sense of direction, lost you take my word for it. She'll wander back into the office sometime in October, thinking it's still July. You don't think it might be time to see someone to look for her? Mr. Weasley suggested tentatively as Percy handed Bagman his tea. Barty Crouch keeps saying that, said Bagman, his round eyes widening innocently. But we really can't spare anyone to the moment. Oh, talk of the devil, Barty. A wizard had just apparated at their fireside, and he could not have made more of contrast with Ludo Bagman. Sprawled on the grass in his old wraps, robes, Barty Crouch was a stiff, upright, elderly man dressed up in an impeccably crisis suit and tie. The patterning in his short grey hair was almost unnatural straight, and his narrow toothbrush moustache looked as though he trimmed it using a slide rule. His shoes were very highly polished. Harry could see at once why Percy idolized him. Percy was a great believer in rigidly following rules, and Mr. Crouch had complied with the rule about Muggle dressing so thoroughly that he couldn't have passed for the bank manager. Harry doubted even Uncle Vernon would have spotted him for what he really was. Pull up a bit of grass, Barty said Ludo brightly, patting the ground beside him. No thanks, Ludo, said Crouch, and there was a bite of impatience in his voice. I have been looking for you everywhere. The Bulgarian are insisting we add another 12 seat to the top box. Oh, is that what they are after? Said Bagman. I thought the chap was asking to borrow a pair of wizard. Bit of strong accent, Mr. Crouch, said Percy breathlessly, sunk into a kind of half bow that made him look like a hunchback. Would you like a cup of tea? Oh, said Mr. Crouch, looking over at Percy in mild surprise. Yes, thank you, goodbye. Fred and George chalk into their own cup. Percy were pink around the ear, himself the kettle. Oh, I have been waiting a word with you to Arthur, said Mr. Crouch, his sharp eyes falling upon Mr. Weasley, Ali Bashir's own backpack. He wants a word with you about your embryo on flying carpet. Mr. Weasley had a deep sigh. I sent him an owl about that just last week. If I have told him once, I have told him 100 times. Carpet are defined as a Muggle artifacts by the registry of a proscribed chambered object. But will we listen? I doubt it, said Mr. Crouch. Accepting a cup from Percy, he is desperate to export here. Well, they'll never replace broom in Bradenton, will they? Said Bagman. Ali thinks there is a niche in the market for a family vehicle, said Mr. Crouch. I remember my grandfather had an administrator that could seat 12, but that was before carpet were banned. Of course, he spoke as though he wanted to leave nobody in any doubt that all his ancestors had abided strictly by the law. So been keeping busy, Barty, said Bagman breezily, fiercely, said Mr. Crouch dryly. Organizing portkey across 5 content is no mean feat, Ludo. I expect you'll both be glad when this is over, said Mr. Weasley. Ludo Bagman looked shocked. Glad? Don't know when I have had more fun. Still, it's not, though. We haven't got anything to look forward to. A party, yea, plenty left to organize. Yeah, Mr. Crouch raised his eyebrows at Bagman. He agreed not to make announcement until all the details. Oh, details, said Bagman, waving the word away like a cloud of mites. They have signed, haven't they? They have agreed, they haven't they? I bet you anything this time is all soon enough anyway. I mean, happening at Hogwarts? No, we need to meet the Bulgarians, said Mr. Crouch sharply. But Bagman remarked first. Thank you for being very much. You see, and grumpy back up Percy and waited for you to do it. Bagman struggled to his feet, bringing out the last of his old with me. Uncommentrating, he waved. Party Crouch nodded heartily, and both of them disappeared. What's happening at Hogwarts, Dad? Said Fred at once. What were they were talking about? You'll find out soon enough, said Mr. Weasley, smiling. It's classified information until such time as the ministry decided to release it, said Percy stiffly. Mr. Crouch was quite right not to disclose it. Oh, shut up. What by? Said Fred. A sense of excitement rose like a pale cloud over the campsite as the afternoon wore on. At dusk, the still summer air itself seemed to be quivering with anticipation, and as darkness spread like a curtain over the thousands of waiting wizards, at last visit of present disappeared. The ministry seemed to have bowed to the inevitable and stopped fighting, the sign of blatant magic now breaking out everywhere. Salesmen were operating every few feet, carrying trays as pushing carts full of extraordinary merchandise. There were luminous rosette, green for Ireland, red for Bulgaria, which were squalling the name of their players. White green hat beaded with dancing shamrock, Bulgarian scarf adorned with lions with really rolled flag from both countries that played their national anthem as they were waved. There were tiny model of fireball that really flew and collectible figure of famous players which stroll across the palm of your hand, preening themselves. Been seeing my pocket money all summer for this. What told Harry as they and Hermione strolled through the sermon, buying souvenir, though Ron purchased a dancing shamrock hat and a large green rosette. He also bought a small figure of Victor Crumb, the Bulgarian seeker. The miniature Crumb walked backward and forward over Ron's hand, scrolling up at the green roster above him. Wow, look at this, said Harry, hurrying over to a cart pile high with what looked like brass bin coals. Expect that they were covered with all sorts of weird knobs and dials. Binoculars, said the sales wizard eagerly. You can replay action, slow everything down, and they flash up a play-by-play breakdown if you needed Bulgarian 10-gallon each. Wish I hadn't brought this now, said Ron, gesturing at his dancing shamrock hat and gazing longingly at the omnicolors. 3 years, said Harry firmly to the wizard. No, don't bother, said Ron, going road. He was always touchy about the fact that Harry, who had inherited a small fortune from his parents, had much more money than he did. You won't be getting anything for Christmas, Harry told him, thrusting binoculars into his hand, Hermione's hand for about 10 years, mine. Fair enough, said Harry, Ron grinning. Oh, thanks, Harry, said Hermione, and I'll get us some programs. Their money bags considerable lighter, they went back to the tent. Bill, Charlie, and Ginny were all sporting green rosters too. And Mr. Weasley was carrying an Irish flag. Fred and George had no servants as they had given Bagman all their gold. And then a deep, booming gong sounded somewhere beyond the wood, and at once green and red lighted blazed into life in the trees, lightening a path to the field. It's time, said Mr. Weasley, looking as excited as any of them. Come on, let's go. That's it for today. Thank you so much. Stay tuned for next chapter. Till then, see ya. Bye bye.